Hello, ISAR members. I am your host for this interview and for this moment, Nadia Shah. Thank you so much for being here. Well, I have the great pleasure of speaking to you and speaking with the great Rick Levine. So I'm speaking to you about the ISAR Symposium that is coming up on the 28th of August, 2021. This is online and it is looking at what is astrology. And as part of this symposium, we do have some of the most brilliant astrologers alive today who are participating in this event. And one of them is the great Rick Levine that we have with us here. Thank you, Rick, for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being a part of what looks to be a very, very cool event. I'm really excited about being a part of it.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of it. And you're going to be speaking on astrology is quantum. So what does that mean?
Got a week, a month, a year?
I know, right?
5 minutes, no problem.
Okay.
No, astrology suffers from a very, very serious public relations problem. Because when someone says, I don't believe in astrology, like, gee, you seem like a smart guy. How could you possibly believe in that crap? I don't believe in astrology. My response is, neither do I. I don't believe in the astrology that you don't believe in. Because people don't understand the width and breadth and depth. I guess width and breadth are the same. Anyhow, and so one of my areas of exploration has been, this is embarrassing, for 50 years, has been the relationship between astrology and the history of knowledge, the intellectual history, and in particular, after being shunted aside from the academic intelligentsia for at least the past 2 centuries or so, really beginning with the Age of Enlightenment, which our friend Rob Hand calls the Age of Endarkenment, when it was thought that by Descartes and others, that if you had enough mathematical formulas and data points, you could know everything in the world. And nothing could be further from the truth. So modern science went through an amazing transformation, almost like a death and rebirth through the 20th century that we call the quantum revolution. And that quantum revolution has actually revolutionized everything, including astrology. Now, whether or not a person who is an astrologer knows anything about quantum physics or not, doesn't matter. But I can tell you this, as you begin to learn and understand the dynamics of what happens at the microcosmic level, because there's no question about it that modern science has developed this thing we call quantum physics to deal with the crazy shit that happens at the subatomic level. I mean, Niels Bohr, the guy who came up with a lot of the theory of quantum physics, once said, quantum physics is not stranger than you think. It's stranger than you can think. And yet, that's what's going on at the subatomic level, where particles of, no one's ever seen an electron. What we see are clouds of electron possibilities. Just think about that for a year or two. No one's ever seen a photon, which is a packet of light. What we see is basically the potential of that photon. And one of the basic concepts of this, what's called the particle wave duality, that everything at the subatomic level exists as a particle and a wave simultaneously. And it travels like a wave, just like at the ocean, a surf. Light travels like a wave. Radio, waves are basically light propagating at a frequency that's way higher than we can see. Actually, it's at a frequency lower than we can see. Let me correct myself there. But the point is that when you go to measure light and you try to zone in on it to see what these waves actually are, we don't see waves, we see light as a photon, as a particle. And we can see how it travels as a particle, but as soon as we stop looking at it, it goes back to being a wave. And that's the craziest thing that we could possibly imagine, except here's where this impacts astrology. And it impacts every part of astrology that we do. Again, whether we know it or not. Because the modern scientist will say that things that exist in this realm, which is called the mesocosm. The microcosm is the very, very tiny. Cosm, just a Greek word that meant order and beauty together simultaneously, because to the Greeks, the universe was both orderly and beautiful. It was like a, and so the microcosm is the tiny, beautiful order. The macrocosm, where we as astrologers like to hang, that is the macro, the large beauty and order. But in between the two of them is where we live, and that's the mesocosm. Now, modern scientists, theoretical physicists, will tell us that in the mesocosm, cause and effect work, Newtonian mechanics work, Descartes' Cartesian coordinates for mapping everything works. That's at the mesocosm. But when we get into the very tiny world, all of a sudden the laws change, and they're completely bizarre as to what we would see in this world. Here's the thing. What we know that scientists don't know is something that comes from the Emerald Tablet. And that is very simply, as above, so below. The within of things is as the without of things. The within of things is the microcosm. The without of things is the macrocosm. And the same particle wave duality and all of its interpretations that stem from that occur at the microcosm. Werner Heisenberg was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for what we call the uncertainty principle, which means it's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which means that at any given moment, the more you know about where a photon, that's a packet of light, the more you know about where a photon is, the less you know about where it's going. And the more you know about its waveness, where it's going, the less you know about its particleness, that's where it is. And I always begin my longer workshops with a discussion with my students as to, okay, so what about planets? Are they particles or waves? And most people just gravitate to the fact, well, there's the moon. It's almost full. It's a particle. There's Saturn. It has rings around it. These are huge fucking particles. They're big. I call them BFPs, big fucking particles.
Okay.
And these big these BFPs are huge, but they're still particles. And when we do a chart, we actually map where each and every particle, each and every planetary point is in a chart. And we look at a chart that's filled with photons, with points.
Yeah.
However, the moon is not a point. It's a wave frequency of 13 cycles a year. Instead of like when you listen to FM radio and you're listening to 89.7, that's 89.7 million cycles every second. In the wall, we get electrical current, depending on where you are on the planet, at 50 or 60 cycles every second. But the moon is just an electromagnetic, very, very, very ultra, ultra, ultra low frequency at 13 cycles a year. And Saturn at almost 3 cycles, a little bit over 3 cycles a century, or Pluto at 4 cycles a millennium. So what does that do to our thinking? How does that difference of particle and wave impact what we used to believe when we thought things were Newtonian mechanically particles like billiard balls? That was where we had astrology tied to fate. You see, fate is to particle as free will is to wave.
Wow.
And the two are not separate, and matter of fact, they both exist. Light is a particle and a wave. You know, people always ask astrologers, so do you believe astrology is, fate, or is it fate or free will? And the answer is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. At any given moment, the more you know about fate, the less you know about free will. You can't hold both at once, and vice versa. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. but it really shifts our thinking into opening us up so that when we're looking at charts, we're not looking at particles, we're looking at hum. We're looking at frequency. This is the value of David Cochran's work with vibrational astrology, because that, you see, people do harmonics and they use aspects without knowing that aspects and harmonics are interchangeable. They're just, they're languaging it differently. But the point is that even people who use harmonics think here's the chart and there's the harmonic. No, the chart is the bass note on harmonies, on frequencies. It's all hum. The music of the spheres, as conceived by Pythagoras and endorsed by Kepler, is not some intellectual artifact. We just can't hear the music because it's so low frequency. Instead, we dance to it through our entire lives. That's what I'm talking about.
How beautiful. And so this is just a little bit of a tip of the iceberg, as you said, about what you're going to be talking about during the ISAR Symposium. And so I think it's going to be so fascinating. I know just what I heard right now is so fascinating. And I did want to add, David Cochran and Vibrational Astrology is going to be part of the ISAR Symposium as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and as it should be, if we're looking at like, what is astrology? There's so many ways to consider it.
David and I were just born a month apart, and we're kind of like, he has my Aries stellium in Taurus. So he just does my thing, but makes it real. or I mean, there's very much on an intellectual level, we're very much soul brothers, because we're really seeing it in a very similar way, and still languaging it slightly different. But it's a very important change in astrology that really began with Dane Rudhyar's understanding of cycles and moon cycles, and even the non-traditional aspects like semi-squares, sesqui-squares, quintiles, biquintiles, septiles, what I call the X-files or the X-tiles. But this is a large shift, and astrology is still in the middle of it, and it has yet to offer the full fruit that it will as we continue working this area.
And so what are you excited about in terms of, like, why do you look forward to being part of this symposium?
Well, first of all, I love the TED conference, scenario where, and I've been to a few other conferences like this, where, forget about the 2-hour or 1-day deep immersions. Those are important. And all the speakers on this are all doing that kind of work. But this is like a 1 day of a kaleidoscope trip through. They're like points on a complex star, dodecahedron, something. And in a way, getting a 20-minute zap from each of these people that has something to offer. I think I love the idea. I mean, it's going to be a wasted day for me. I mean, wasted because I know who the speakers are. I know pretty much all the speakers, and just to hear each of them give a concise 20-minute, kind of a Virgo-in laser fine-tuned beam of their stuff, I'm excited about it. Yeah, I think
well, we're going to try our darndest, aren't we? Like, you and I both have our Aries Cancer energy going on. And so I know that you and I both, like, we can get very excited and passionate about the topic, but yes, we will bring forward those qualities to hone in and really deliver something that I hope a lot of people are going to love. And there's going to be so much information throughout the day. But of course, you are one of my very favorite people. So I'm really going to be looking forward to your talk in particular. I always learn so much from you. And I've known you now for about 10 years. And you're just amazing every time I interact with you, which has been quite a few times.
We've both come a long way in those 10 years.
I know, right? In so many ways.
I remember the first time we met and doing an interview, actually.
Yes, I remember you were one of my very first important interviews, and it meant so much to me that you took that time out to sit with me. And even now, like, to have this moment with you now, to be part of ISAR and to have you, or at least to just be sharing with you in all these different ways in terms of your brilliance and celebrating your brilliance. It's just such a privilege for me.
Well, thank you. And the exciting thing about this, though, is that I'm just one of 10 or 15 brilliant points I mean, I love all those wonderful and nice and lovely things that you said about me, but I feel that same way about everyone on the program. And that's the cool thing about this.
Yeah, isn't it? I love that we as astrologers can be excited and supportive of each other, and that we can continue to learn from each other. I like to say one lifetime isn't enough to know all that there is to know. And so events like this allow us to continue to learn and grow together. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I saw a bumper sticker recently that said, hire teenagers while they still know everything.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Rick Levine, where can people find you before I let you go? Where can people find you?
I write a little daily, I guess, a blog. It's maybe like I've been writing daily horoscopes for 20 years.
Yeah,
And it's not by sign, but you can find it on Instagram at Rick Levine Astrologer, or on Facebook at Rick Levine Astrologer, facebook.com/Rick Levine Astrologer. And that's probably, the easiest way to, to kind of tune into what it is I'm doing.
Well, I love following you on Instagram. Like I said, I always learn from you. You're one of the very few astrologers that I like to check in on and see what your thoughts are about the given sky. And the reason that I follow very, very few astrologers is because, or at least I read very few. I follow them so that I can give them love, but there are very few that I actually take the time to either watch or read, because I don't want to accidentally plagiarize anybody. But I am so enriched by your astrological knowledge.
Well, and plus, whether you remember or not, I've given you a lifetime permission to plagiarize and use absolutely anything you ever hear from me ever. I don't own any of the thoughts that I say. I'm, as Ram Dass used to say, I'm just the rent-a-mouth. It comes through me. It's not, I hope, I'm thrilled when I see ideas out there that I think, gee, I think I might have came up with that 20 years ago or whatever. And I see, that's fantastic. It's absolutely great. And I think that that's one of the things about the community groups of people on the planet. I know that when you get into certain academic realms, you get people who are intellectually very fine-tuned, but I think that there's a certain breed of people in astrology, and we tend to really be, above average in our desire to make sense out of the complexity and the simplicity of all that is. So yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today, Rick Levine. And I look forward to your presentation with the ISAR Symposium. And thank you, everybody out there as well. I hope that you will join us, and I will link to the ISAR Symposium below, or you can find us at isarastrology.org. Thank you again for watching. And until we connect again, take care. Bye.